Alrighty, so we kind of meander our way through TV on this podcast, go to different places for different reasons. I guess when we started, it was more or less chronological. Of like, let's see what the oldest stuff is I can possibly find. But then as we've gotten to the modern era, it's more themes, whatever theme things went by. So last week we watched All Creatures Great and Small, the both versions, and compared and contrasted. And that made me think, this has just been sitting in the back of my brain, is we did watch some of those like slice of life Japanese cartoons that I've been getting into a lot. Like Eurocamp's kind of the main one. But that style of a show that's kind of laid back and doesn't necessarily have a lot of drama or even a lot of plot is just something North America doesn't do anymore. Like we noticed that last week with All Creatures Great and Small. They've added in extra drama and extra romantic possibilities and extra, the old vet's a real dick now, gotta get past his tough exterior, just adding all this extra drama. Like you can't really find a North American show anymore that is just, let's just chill. Whereas in the 70s and the 80s, you could, like the old All Creatures Great and Small felt more that way, of like episodic.
Yeah, episodic, more natural.
Yeah.
Just life.
And yeah, that's just what I've been into lately, because I'm just kind of burned out on drama. It's like, yeah, I've seen it all, man versus nature, man versus man versus himself, blah, blah, blah. How about man versus nothing? How about let's just fucking hang out? So there's a whole slew of those Japanese cartoons where their tradition of it started in like the 90s, that as their culture was getting more and more stressful and, they're like a crazy workaholic culture too. It came out first as like short stories and things, but they call it iyashikei, and it is just like calming stories. So like, it's just like after your hard day at work, maybe you don't want to watch a guy with a lot of pressure on his shoulders. Maybe you just want to watch a nice calm show. And, there's a lot of these shows I still haven't watched. And one of them that was just floating in the back of my head is I saw this YouTube guy, his channel's called Beyond Ghibli, and he just does little video essays about anime. And he mentioned this one that is one of these iyashikei shows that's just kind of slice of lifey, but it was about farms in some way and cows and animals and stuff. I didn't really remember the details, but watching All Creatures Great and Small, it came back into my brain. I was like, maybe not the new All Creatures Great and Small, but the 70s version seems like what this guy was describing in this cartoon from Japan. So I was like, hey, that's the connection, right? That's a bit tenuous, but it's close enough. It's a good excuse for me to finally watch this farming show and just see what it's like. So the show itself, it's called Silver Spoon, which is a little weird because there was a sitcom in the 70s called Silver Spoons here, but it is not that. It's just called Silver Spoon. And I didn't look into it too deep because I figured it's better just to watch it, but from what I gather, it's actually a high school show, but it's a guy who's kind of trying to rebel against his dad or something. So he goes to an agricultural high school. He's like, nuts to you, I'm not doing all your fancy pants, high pressure school. I'm going to go to the farming school, but just kind of to be a dick. And then when he gets there, he learns all about agricultural life, and maybe it's not as easy as he thought it was, and maybe it's not just the thing dumb people do or whatever. That seems to be the point of the show. And it's by Hiromu Arakawa, which I thought was interesting because the only Hiromu I know is Hiromu Takahashi, is a pretty famous wrestler, and is a dude. Hiromu Arakawa is a woman. So it turns out Hiromu is a non-unisex. Let's just say that. A non-unisex name. And I'm also surprised that this Silver Spoon show is about this rural agricultural stuff, because her other series that she's famous for, I've heard of before. I haven't seen it, but it's a really famous anime called Full Metal Alchemist. And it's like a steampunk show where it's like set in sort of a Victorian era, but they have steam-powered robots and stuff. So it's like the past and the future. And it doesn't have magic as such, but it does have alchemy, which is essentially magic. Fantastical stuff, action, adventure, whatever. So it's kind of weird that her follow-up series after this really popular big action show is Farm School. But she did it as a comic for years, and it won all kinds of awards, and so here we go. So that's really all I know about it. So I just grabbed the first couple episodes, and I guess we can just see what it's like.
Okay, sure. Let's check her out.
All right.
I'd learned a whole lot, not just about farming, but about myself. This introspection simply can't be found in many mediums, and yet I dwelled on self-aspect's more self-questioning themes for months after the final credits had rolled.
So yeah, I guess you can kind of see why I had sort of maybe a different idea of what that show would be like than it really was. So we just watched the little Beyond Ghibli tiny little YouTube essay about the show. That is how I heard about it. And you know, that guy has this very somber British voice and stuff, but he's talking about this show like it's this deep, almost spiritual experience of like how agriculture works and you know, the ethics of killing animals to eat them and so on and so forth. But the real show is silly. It's just.
I agree. I
Yeah, like-
agree. That little narrative was a wonderful little thing.
Yeah,
It's,
like-
really thought provoking. But the show itself,
Yeah, it's one of these cases where I still would like to watch the show that guy's talking about, but he's not talking about the show we just watched. You know, like it's neat that Japan will do these things. Like we'll do a show about an agricultural high school. That's very unique and interesting. But it was this bizarre mix of like very dry information about the running of a school and of farms and agricultural stuff, and then just like stereotypical anime. Like what I like about those, I was saying those iyashikei shows, you know, Nan Biori and things and Usagi Drop, is that they're very down to earth and calm. Where that show was that sort of, you know, if you ask someone about anime who doesn't watch anime, I feel like that's what they imagine. Is like everyone's making funny faces and crazy shit's happening and it's like really exaggerated and just bizarre, wacky cartoon stuff. And it's just what an odd fit. Why would you do that in the show about a farming high school? You know, like I would have preferred it be more boring, more normal, more down to earth. And I think I might have got into it. But as it is, I'm like, 2 episodes is plenty. I don't think I'm going to make it through any more of that one.
yeah, no, I agree that it doesn't have like any real substance to it. They keep moving from rather than developing something to give it some substance. They just keep moving from scene to scene to scene to scene.
What it actually reminds me a lot of is less so that sort of slice of life genre. It's more like there's a bunch of Japanese manga and cartoons where they'll take something that's just like a random topic, like baking bread, to say, or wine tasting, or playing Go. You know, these things that are just very slow and, you know, mundane sounding, but then they'll put it in the framework of like a battle anime. Like, I'm gonna bake the best bread, and what I have my technique for baking bread from my grandfather in the mountains, and it's the better bread. Or the wine tasting one, I think it's called Drops of God or something, where it's like, the tastes on my tongue, you know, and it's like just taking these things and exploding them into a big silly anime. And that's exactly what this show is. This is one of those shows where it's like, this could have been about anything. It doesn't need to be about an agricultural high school. It could be about, you know, learning to be a Zen monk, or it could be about a normal high school, or it could be about anything. Let's just make it into a zany anime. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, I liked that when I was a teenager. That's what initially drew me to anime. But I guess it's similar to like I was saying last week, how when I was a kid, I liked He-Man, and now I like all creatures great and small. When I was a kid, I liked zany anime. Now that I'm adult, I like the slower, calmer, more realistic anime, and this is not that.
The characters in it would be, 14, 15 years old, 15, 16 maybe?
Right.
So maybe that's the age group she's aiming for.
Yeah.
And they would like this. Whereas we old fogies here are looking for something more connected, more serene.
Yeah, and I mean, like the same thing I sort of criticized the remake of All Creatures Great and Small for, where in the original, you know, he does meet a woman and get married and stuff, but it's way more on the back burner, where in the remake, right out the gates, it's like, here's the romantic interest or whatever. This is also along those lines. Like clearly a big thing they're leaning on is that this guy's got this one girl that is in the equestrian club that he likes, and it's like, the romance part, and yeah, and it's like, yeah, it's like, that's what I liked so much about, that's why I found those iyashikei shows to be such a like revelation, is because they didn't put, like they put on Front Street the boring part. They're like, this show really is going to be about a single guy trying to raise a kid, or a bunch of kids who live in the sticks who have nothing to do, or these girls that like camping. It's not the backup thing. That is the show.
Yeah.
And like this show is not. This show is like wacky, zany comedy crap, and romance subplots are the show, and in the background is the farm stuff. Where I want, if you're going to be the farm stuff, man, be the farm
Yeah,
stuff.
put the farm stuff in the front.
Yeah. So again, I mean, still, I think it's very neat that it exists. It does feel like the kind of thing only Japan would do. But this particular one, yeah, I could go for a lot more. It needs to be tampered way down. This is too exciting. It's exciting up my blood. I need it to calm down and just. But then, because that's what's weird too, is like that's where I feel like the mix doesn't work. Is it's not all wacky, zany, good times and crazy facial expressions and insane cartoon stuff happening. Every once in a while, somebody does have a soliloquy about cloning sheep and I don't know, and just how animal husbandry works, and like these real boring things, they just throw them in. And whereas like that's like what I find is like the sneaky power of the fully boring anime is that they're not boring because you're geared for that. That's what you're here for. That's what you're expecting. Where when a show just throws in little bits of the quote unquote boring information, it does feel boring because before it and after it, there was a big, "Wah, something crazy happened." You know? So anyway.
Yeah, well, I won't be bothered watching any more of those.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad I got to try it out because, again, I just saw that guy's video essay, and that's just been in the back of my brain for the last year. So then when we started watching a show about veterinarians and animals, I was like, oh, wait a minute, what about that thing? So, you know, I got to check it off my checklist. But yeah, that's enough. Dip my toe in, that's plenty.
And we gave it a fair shot. We watched 2 of them. Sometimes I find if you just watch one and you make comment on it, that's not fair. But if you watch 2 and they're the same, then yeah, that's fair game.
And I do
enough.
find so much of stuff, particularly now that I'm an older person, is it's not about the plot and the, you know, what's gonna happen, because I've seen every storyline happen a million times. I don't care. It's the tone. As long as you get me with a tone that I like, I'll just go back to that tone and just live in that tone, and that's what I like the original All Creatures Great and Small or Eurocamp. It's just the tone. I just want to feel the tone, and I didn't like the tone of this. It didn't feel good. It's like, you guys need to calm down. All you kids, you young whippersnappers, you need to calm down and just go learn how to milk a horse. Don't or milk a horse. Go learn how to milk a cow. Don't you know, like the club. Like there's the club that is the different school clubs, and one of them is they put like cows in pageants type club. So that's fine, you know. Of course there's going to be a club for people that want to raise animals for shows and stuff, but they got to play it up like, oh, it's like they're looking at a dirty magazine, but it's really just some kind of weird catalog of cows. And they really play up these characters. Like they literally said, forget human women, you must you know, observe and appreciate the beauty of cows. And like, is that dumb joke really worth it? Wouldn't it have been better for that to just be a normal club? Like, you know, and if you just take that example and multiply it on all fronts, like that's how the whole show is. It's just like, instead of the real version, you went with the joke version, and the joke's not that funny.
Yeah, but it does seem to me like she is aiming just for that certain teen audience.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, it's got those anime tropes. Like even episode 2 ended with, you know, they're in the communal kind of bath, and they're like, hey, you know, I heard up there's the girls' bath. Oh, geez, you know, because they got to have this anime trope thing of like the shower scene or the hot springs and I mean, I don't expect the show about the agricultural school to have nude scenes, but it might, because this is a zany anime for teenagers. Yeah, like I definitely feel like it was misrepresented a bit in the studio or in the Beyond Ghibli guys' essay, because it's definitely not like what I like so much about. I'm just repeating myself at this point, but what I like so much about those really down to earth slice of life anime is that they don't do any of this stuff. They just play it straight. And yeah, that's what I'm waiting for, the playing it straight version of Man, it'd be actually great if they made an anime version of All Creatures Great and Small. I feel like that'd be really neat. But this ain't that. So yeah, from here, I don't know. I don't know what we're doing next week. I mean, I do have that other version of All Creatures Great and Small. We could watch that, the 1975 movie version, or we could take a break and do something else for a while. But
It's 75, and it's British.
yeah, it was a co-production, half American, half British. So it was a made-for-TV movie in America, but it was in theaters in England. But it's none of the same actors. It's different actors. So that's where it might be a little interesting, is just to see, we watched the 78 version and the 2020 version. So this is just one more spin of here's the same characters in the same situation, but different actors yet again.
Well, might be interesting.
Yeah, why not? Stick
Yeah.
with farms and livestock and veterinarians for one more week. So
One more week. Yeah, sure. Fair enough.
cool.